You're listening to Underworld on the Ghost Radio Network.
Listen.
Legends. The unexplained.
Synchronicity.
EVP.
So why are you?
I heard that.
Absolutely fascinating.
What are Min-Min lights?
Is it real? What do you think?
I love you.
The unseen.
I'm alright.
1111. Who or what are mutilated cattle?
Listen.
Poltergeists. Your stories. Your experiences. Listen close.
Hello everyone, I am psychic medium Robbie Thomas, and I'm your special host tonight on the Underworld Show on Ghost Radio Australia. Have you ever thought what 1111 means? What is the synchronicity behind all these numbers, 1111? What is the magical, mystic way of the inner thought, and what does it bring to you? Tonight, I'm sitting with author John Ramses and also his wife, Lia Ramses. And we're going to discuss tonight what is the synchronicities between 1111. So, hang on, hold on tight, this is what it's all about. Since the advent of the digital clock of the late 60s, millions of people around the planet have shared in personal and often emotional phenomena, the repetitive appearance of the digital symbol 1111. For most, the experience is very private and lonely. They know at a cellular level, or perhaps a soul level, the symbol means something important. But they are often ridiculed when attempting to discuss the openly, even among friends and family. Hello, John. Hello, Leah. How are you tonight?
Hey, hello. Robbie, how you going? It's good to have you.
Great, and welcome to my new show.
The acquisition show.
That's it. It's mine. It's done. It's written. Lick it, stick it, stamp it.
That's it. Yeah.
Don't get comfortable, sweetheart.
It feels good to sit in the captain's chair. Let me tell you.
You've already got your own show, Robbie.
Yeah. I'm hired and fired all at the same time. That's not good.
Yeah, we listen to Link to Heaven.
Easy with the host. You have to be easy with the host. You know, the host is the most, and that's me. So
that's it.
Well, tell me, guys. This symbol of I know there's a lot of people out there who have their own interpretation, the manifestation of thought, and what they're thinking this is. A lot of people, and I'll give my own interpretation as well as we go. But a lot of people tend to look at that at a spiritual level. A lot of people take a look at that as impropriety. They take a look at that and they say it means something attached to the Mayan calendar. There's a lot of perspective out there. What is your interpretation of 1111?
Well, Robbie, the 1111 experience can't be summed up in a single definition. It's very multifaceted, multi-leveled, multi-dimensional, if you will. It's an entire experience. But if I were to attempt to summarize it, the experience, I would have to say that 1111 is a symbol that we see that is announcing a point of change in your life. It's announcing that your life is about to change. You're in the midst of change. You're going from one place in your life to another. You're going from one state of being into another. And the 1111 appears at that moment in your life that the transition has begun. It's very much a moment of chaos. In fact, I quite often call this symbol a symbol of chaos. If you're familiar with cymatics and wave sound phenomenon, various tones projected against plates of sand or salt or even liquid will produce different patterns in sacred geometry as the tone changes. As they increase the tone, the patterns change from one design into another. But in between these tones, as it's in a transition, there's a period of chaos where the sand is seemingly scattered everywhere. It's nothing. It's not what it once was, and it's not yet become what it's heading to. And that is a period in your life that the 1111 represents. This is a major change. Now, the experience can be very subtle. It can be something very simple, or it can be something very major. But if the 1111 begins appearing in your life, it's because you're about to make a change. And if it's something that has just started to happen to you, it's because you've reached a point where you're ready to take on this journey. You've reached a time in your life where you've been activated to the point of being aware that there's something greater around you, something mystical, something phenomenal. You've graduated, and now you can go on to begin your courses and participate in this. And some of us reach those points very early in life. Some of us take quite a bit longer. But when you're ready, it'll occur. Now, I don't believe that everybody on the planet will experience it. I think it's a certain group of people, but we'll get into that later. Now, I've been experiencing this for about 33 years now, ever since I was 16 years old, and it has literally governed my life in every major aspect, in every major situation of my life. But it is a doorway, it is an announcement of change, and it is, to me, a symbol of chaos. And we'll get into deeper aspects of this symbol as the night progresses. And people have different understandings of this symbol, depending on which level and which place they're at in their life, how much understanding of it you had. The symbol itself and the purpose and the meaning seems to never change. It is simply this, but it takes us a while to understand what it's doing and why it's appearing in our life and what we're being taught and what we're being led to. And I guess equally important, who we are. That's a big part of the lessons that we're taught along the way is who we are. Leah, what do you think? What's your interpretation? This symbol has literally changed your life.
You know, people say to me, what does 1111 mean? And the first thing I say to them is, I have no idea. The closest I can get to saying what it is to me is that it's a wake-up call or a signpost or a directional beacon of a direction that I should be heading in or that I am heading in the right direction. But that's not all of what it is, Robbie. That's just like if you had to give it a title or a label, that's what I guess it means to me the most. And that's where it's influenced me in my life the most. You know, it's what brought John and I together. It's what really becomes very forthright in my life if something very important is coming. But generally, if people say to me, and I get a lot of people who write to me and say, what is 1111? My first response back to them is, hell if I know. And that would be the... you know, and that's what I know at this moment is I don't know. But it's important, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's like it's an attachment to everybody. We all have this synchronicity in our lives. And, you know, Lia Ramses is the co-director of Ghost Radio and the usual host of this program, but now I have inherited it for this day. And, you know, your talent on this program, you've brought a very wide variety of showcase to the public and to the audience. Now, this being, I would say, one of the most heated topics because of the fact that there's so many people out there with their own interpretation. Now that you've just stated what you have, and being that you are the co-director of this program, over the years, has anybody ever come to you and tried to discuss what their interpretation is, and can you share some of that?
Oh, lots of people adamant that they know what it means. And I'm sure for them, it is their truth. And if it is helping them in their life and in the direction of where they're supposed to be going, and if it helps create their passion, then I'm sure for them that's what it is. But groups of people come together for various reasons, as you and I know. And for the people in my life who see 1111 and who I have been brought together with, we certainly all feel or all have the same synchronous patterns in our lives that also involve 1111. And John and I have, you know, we've done surveys and we've asked people, And we've, just what we've noted over years and years and years, and John more so than me, we have actually just discovered quite a few patterns amongst people who do see this number that we're not sure if it means anything or if it's just a way of recognising each other, which is what I think it might actually be. It's just a recognition signal of that this person perhaps on the other side of the world has also had the same family pattern as what you've had, and also sees 1111, and it also came into their life in an important part, and it also helped them make some very important decisions. So for the people that I've resonated to with 1111, for us it has all meant the same type of message, and it's really cool to find each other. It really, really is. It's really cool to find each other, and when we do find each other, it can also be part of it as well, I think. It's such a huge subject, Robbie. It really is. It's a massive subject, and many, many people have very, very adamant thoughts on what it is, and that's fine, you know. If that's their truth, I'm totally cool with that. And I hope that they will be totally cool with the fact that my truth might not be anything like theirs. But I can only share tonight what 1111 means to me and in my life. When I started to see it, my cat woke me up and 1111 was flashing on my clock. My petrol clicked out at 1111. I got up and my microwave was on 1111. It just absolutely bombarded me. And I thought, this is really weird. And it was more than really weird. It was, this is trying to say something to me. And then I thought, well, that's a really odd thought, you know, numbers trying to say something to you. And I've actually done quite a lot of numerology. I've done numerology courses. I have certificates for what that's worth in numerology. And I kept trying to tie it in with numerology. And the one thing I've learnt over the past probably 10 or 11 years is that it actually doesn't have anything to do with numerology. That's the first thing. I was able to kind of discount that fairly early on. That it's not ending. I mean, 11 is a power number, but to me, it doesn't actually have any resonance to the stuff that I was taught in numerology. But when I started to see this number, I shot off a very simple email to a group that I belonged to at the time, which was the Spirit Web, which is now defunct, but at the time it was a huge internet community. And the email went something along the lines of, does anybody know what this 1111 means? It keeps following me around. That was the basis of the email. A lady in Canada wrote back to me and she said, I don't see this, but my friend does, and with your permission, I'd like to forward on this email to him. I said, yeah, cool, I just want to know what this thing means. And that person happened to be John. And from that email that I sent out and the connection that was made, 1111 became a massive part of my life, and it became a complete turning point in my life. And when it comes up again, it generally means something like that as well. So it's a really interesting journey. It's a really, really cool ride.
Yeah, and you know, I find very interesting, and we'll get to John in a second, but I want to touch upon this. The synchronicities of 1111 that goes throughout one's life, such as yourself. You guys were married on November 11th.
We were married on the 11th of November 1999 at 11:11 p.m. The ceremony took 11 minutes, and we were married under an 11% moon, and my tattoo is the Eye of Horus with 1111 in red underneath it. So, yeah, you could say it plays an important part of our life.
Yeah, you can say it's really, I'm not going to say it's a stigmata, but I mean, it's there. It's an attachment to you guys, and it's phenomenal.
Oh, it is.
It's a phenomenon to begin with.
It is. It's, you know, it's really hard to put into words. It really, really is, to try and explain to other people who don't see it, who might be listening to this tonight, are just going to say, well, they're just, you know, that's just stupid. How can numbers follow you around? But they do, Robbie. They follow you around, and more than that, they crack you over the head, like psychically, and say, you will listen. You will pay attention. Something big is coming. I am here to tell you something. Are you listening? At least that's the way it felt to me.
Right. And it's amazing. It's amazing. Oh, well, we're going to swing chairs here. We're going to look right at John. You're the author of a book about 1111. Now, I want to touch base quickly with you is, what has driven you or given you that passion to write about 1111?
Well, a few reasons, really. First is over 30 years of intimate experience with this phenomena in my life. Another reason would be the countless letters and queries that I've had and still continue to get concerning 1111 and what it means. The experience with 1111 has been very personal, very private, and very emotional at times. To sit down and reply to an email it is almost impossible and give them any kind of a coherent answer because the experience of 1111 is so multi-layered, multifaceted. I would literally have to explain my life and all the circumstances surrounding this in order to give some kind of an explanation that is, would be helpful to them. And, naturally I can't do that. So I decided to put this book together, just telling the story of my experiences, the synchronicity, how it works for me, the emotion behind it, the good times, the bad times, and the periods of ridicule in my life, and when it first began, the early years when people thought I was crazy. Every single aspect that I have experienced is in this book. My life has literally been comprised of a journey of synchronicities from the time I was 16 years old when I first began experiencing this to ultimately ending up here in Australia and doing what I'm doing now with Ghost Radio and hosting and sponsoring people and connecting people. 1111 has played an intimate part in all of this, in every aspect of my life. And I see other numbers, sets too, or symbols, but 1111 is the primary element in my life. And in writing this book and making it available to everyone, I think people will recognize a lot of themselves in it. Perhaps not the exact same experience, but very similar. The title of my book is A Stranger Life, an autobiography of an unusual journey. But I think, personally, I think a more appropriate title would be simply For My Children. And the reason is, today I see a lot of young people who are questioning synchronicity, who are finding magic in their own life, who are becoming aware of this magic in their life. I mean, even in music by young people, you're starting to see and hear this magic being incorporated into their songs and their music. There's even songs written about 1111. They're asking questions, and they want answers. And I think, personally, I don't want to see them have to go through what I did and what so many like me did of my generation. When we first began experiencing it, the 1111 in the 60s and 70s, we were alone. Absolutely alone. We had nobody to call on, to talk to. There was no internet, no websites for reference. And we've had to live with this and the ridicule and the confusion and slowly learn about it over a span of, nearly half a lifetime. For me, it's been about 33 years now. And I'd like them to be able to read this book and say, wow, this is happening to me, and now I understand. I've got a better grip on it. I'm not crazy. I just have to watch out for these synchronicities and opportunities and follow where it takes me, because I have a bigger destiny. And I'm hoping, even in my own children, whom I see so much knowledge and talent and passion and so much hope for the future in them, as I do so many other young children. I don't want them to waste their life just looking for the answers. I want them to be able to learn from us and say, wow, you guys have already been here. And, you've paid your dues. And, hopefully they'll grab something from that. So, there's a lot of reasons for writing the book, and not least of which is just for entertainment.
And for those of you who do not know, John Ramses is the creator and director of the hugely popular Ghost Radio Network, which I'm very proud to be a part of. And again, hosting this beautiful show, the Underworld Show. Now, in all the time that you've done Ghost Radio, the fact that you've done so much programming, is there ever a time that any one individual has come across as knowing much about 1111 on your perspective level that you've heard through interviews?
Well, no, I haven't. Not the all-encompassing experience. or inner knowledge of what the 1111 and other numbers are. I've heard a lot of valid points and a lot of valid theories on what it is from people who have experienced it in an attempt to interpret it. And I've heard a lot of, what I would personally consider to just be flowery BS. Lia recently interviewed Peter Gersten. Now, Peter Gersten and I go back in communications into, I think 1996, 97, somewhere around there, during the days of Art Bell, when Art Bell was on. And Peter has some very valid points and interpretations of this. And his experiences validate the validity of this experience and the realism of it for him. But I would say that the same problem arises for everyone as it does for even me, that things that we know internally, instinctively, we have a very difficult time assigning a label to or even putting words to. It's so hard to describe something like this, especially when it's not really tangible. It's a very personal experience. It's like people who see the return of a dead relative or communicate with them. You ask them, well, can you explain that? Can you describe it? Well, no, they can't. They can tell you what happened, but not the inner, deeper feeling. And also, from my perspective, it's really difficult to assign a theory to it. It's not really something to theorize or hypothesize. This is an experience, and it's kind of like going to the fair and being involved in it all and participating and experiencing the fair, and then saying, what's the theory behind this fair? Why is it here? Why is it happening? Well, it just is, and you're a part of it. But no, I haven't heard any all-encompassing, theories or explanations that really grab the core of what this thing is. And not even tonight will we be able to adequately explain. We can only share our experiences and our feelings and some of the circumstances surrounding it. And what I've come to learn through my experiences and observations of who we are, our place in it, our role that we're playing, so to speak, and, perhaps where it's all leading to. I mean, after 33 years of living this experience in such an intimate fashion as I have, I've arrived at certain definite conclusions about who we are, we who experience it, and our roles that we play, the various classes of our type of people, because there are definitely different types of experiencers, I should say, with different purposes. Kind of like an ant colony. Everybody's got their own thing to do, and we just do it, almost instinctively.
When you realized it was something meaningful, did you try to talk with anybody about it?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, I was pretty innocent back in those days. I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, even though I knew and felt instinctively that this was something, perhaps intelligent or something meaningful, I tried talking to people about it quite a bit, especially in the family. Now, my mom and dad are fairly open to the paranormal, and they've had a lot of experiences themselves throughout their life with ghosts and hauntings, with UFO, with possible maybe abductions, definitely levitation, being elevated out of the beds. They're very open about it. So yes, I could talk to them, but this was something unique. This was something that could not be described, and it was something that I was going through, but not them. And until you've experienced something, it's very hard to see where a person's coming from. So mostly it was they'd listen and say, well, yeah, maybe it's something, but whatever. I do have a very good friend that I've had all my life since junior high school, Robert Newman, and he has been there through all of this pretty much, especially in the early years. He's seen these things happen, and he and I could talk, and he and I could theorize. In fact, sometimes we'd take off and go driving just for the purpose of discussing philosophy and experiences and world viewpoints. I've shared the 1111 with everybody who I've been close with. But as time went on, it was something that I just kind of kept to myself because, well, they weren't seeing it. They weren't experiencing it. And no matter how many times I say, gee, look at that. Wasn't that coincidental? You know, you said this at exactly the same time. I looked at the clock and it said 11:11. It doesn't matter. That was my personal experience. And even now, if I say something or Leah says something and she says, oh, look, it's 11:11, I'll say, you saw that, not me. You know, that's your burden to carry. You figure it out. You know, it's a personal experience again, and it's so hard to talk about, to communicate, relate to. But, and I thought I was alone until about 1995, I think it was, when Solara came out with her book.
I don't agree entirely with Solara. She's got a lot of good points in there. There are things that resonate to me, but other things don't. I have to give credit to Solara that she had reached out and published this book and let me, as well as probably thousands of others, know that we weren't alone. Now, until that time, from the age 16 until 1995, when I found her book on a shelf, some very uncanny situations that led to that, you know, I had lived with this alone. Everybody in my family thought I was crazy. Most of my friends, with the exception of one good friend, my dear friend Robert, but everybody else just thought I was crazy, and I learned to keep it to myself. And when I found her book on the shelf of this New Age bookstore, I mean, I almost passed out. I grabbed it, I went up, I didn't even look at the price. I just handed a wad of cash to the cashier, ran out the door with it, and the first place I went was to a bowling alley where I knew my family was bowling at the time. And I ran right up the alley, you know, right up to their table and said, look at this, 11:11, other people see it. You know, I said, I'm not crazy. And, but I tell you, that moment was pivotal in my life. I mean, I held on to that book for so long, and I read it through several times, but it was such a moment in my life that, you know, if it hadn't have been for Solara, well, most of us would probably be still living in solitude with this, wondering what the hell. You know, we'd probably be out in, you know, the mental institutions by now.
Right.
But she was a very key factor in bringing that out. But like I say, some of the information that I read at that time just didn't resonate. But of course, this has been an evolution. You know, I haven't read, you know, anything that she's put out lately, but you know, her ideas and concepts and understanding of it could have evolved. But
yeah, so at this point, I'd just like to acknowledge Solara for all she's done for keeping the rest of us out of the mental institution and allowing us to continue on to our productive journeys and our respective purposes.
Right. What kind of journey has this symbol led you on, and for what purpose?
Oh, boy, we could talk all week about that. The journey has been a journey of discovery of who I am, my place in humanity, a discovery of who other people like me are, how to identify us, and a journey of growing and learning, of becoming wise, or I should say wiser. So there has been so many unique and precious moments throughout this entire experience in my life. Every major situation in my life, from relationships to marriages to jobs to moving to locations, changing countries, has all had 11:11 incorporated into it. The 11:11 was there to announce these changes. If I was in a job and 11:11 began to appear, I knew that something was going to happen. I knew that my time there was up. I've done what I needed to do. It served me monetarily, and I've come in contact with and spoken to and passed a message on to somebody there, or, you know, people there that I was supposed to talk to. And I've learned all that I can in that situation, and now it's time to move on. Relationships the same way. And look, I'll tell you straight out that a lot of these changes are not wanted. We all like that comfort zone, and nobody likes change. But for people who experience the 11:11, it seems that change is a part of their existence. And a lot of times it's very difficult. I mean, you get into a relationship and you think it's forever. And it's very hard to come to terms that the relationship is somehow going to end soon. And you can feel it, and you see this 11:11 all the time. Perhaps both of you do. And there's such an uncertainty of the future. Try to stay in the relationship, try to stay in the job, and something will happen that pushes you on. There'll be some event. For an example, one of the jobs that I was working at in 1995, I had grown comfortable there. I did not want to move on. I had had enough of it. Then the 11:11 began to appear again, and in conjunction with seeing this 11:11, there's another unique aspect that I want to point out, because I think it's very important, and I think that other people out there share in this. Well, I know they do, because I've talked with them. But not only does this number begin to announce that a change is coming, that it's part of a life path, it's part of a purpose, but there is also an air of sadness in the eyes of the people that you've worked with, that you've lived with. People that you've known for a long time seem to have this look in their eyes of, you know, I've really had a good time, it's been wonderful, and God, I'm going to miss you. And that feeling, when I see this in my friends' eyes and workmates or relationships, it really unnerves me. I hate it. I can't stand it, because I know there's going to be a change and I can't fight it. I have never been able to fight it, as hard as I've tried. And in this one circumstance, one of many, where I was in this job, I had had enough. I decided I was going to stay here. This is where I was going to be. I was comfortable, and I liked the people I worked with. Then 11:11 began to appear, probably after a year of employment there. Coupled with this was that look in people's eyes, that atmosphere of, you know, it's been great, and I'm really going to miss you, but, see you down the road. And I was determined to stay in that job. I was determined to stay there and fight it. This company had been in business for 20 years. It was hugely successful. It had never had a layoff. It had never had any problems whatsoever. When I had made that decision, the 11:11 stopped appearing to me for a week. At the end of that week, on Friday, they drew a big meeting and announced that the company was closing. Absolutely absurd and unheard of. They had just decided that they wanted to close shop. They'd had enough. The owner was retiring, and that was the end of it. And in these circumstances, I feel like I was personally responsible for that, because I did not move on. Maybe there's more to it and things they needed to move on with, but the point is, this happens all the time. No matter how hard I try to stay in something and stay in one location or in one circumstance, when it's time to go, it's time to go. And that's when this 11:11 appears. Sometimes they're so subtle, it's just a matter of, I'm going to go to the store at this particular time. And I see 11:11 on the clock as I'm starting to get in, and I'm thinking, wow, I'll pay attention. Well, sure enough, I meet somebody down there or come in contact with somebody and say a few words that, they needed to hear, and, God, maybe it changed their entire direction in life. And sometimes they're big. Sometimes they're the end of a marriage, the end of a relationship. The one thing that I've learned is to go with it. And as hard as that is to do emotionally, you can't avoid it. And I've learned also that no matter how difficult it seems to be at the time, and how forlorn your life seems to be at that moment, and you're asking, what the hell is it all about? What am I going to do now? Where am I going to go? There's always a purpose. I have never once been in these situations where within a few months, I'm already on my new path. I have already settled into another situation, and it's not long before I see the signs. I'll meet somebody, and I'll know instantly that, okay, you're the person I'm supposed to be here for. And, it's not always about somebody else. It's sometimes about my desires, things that I want, things that I have dreams of, are meshing with other people who have similar dreams. This is very important because every single one of us out there who experience this, we're all part of this net, this grid. And if we have a dream and a desire, we're ultimately going to connect with the right people who have similar dreams and desires. And for a moment, if only for a moment, we're going to cross paths. And we're going to receive that element that helps to boost our dreams or our desires, helps make them come true. And I've been in that situation many times. And I've also helped many people. I've had the talent, the abilities to be at the right place at the right time and offer assistance, to offer guidance, to offer, my talents. And they're just like, wow, this is so uncanny. Where did you come from? Well, if I told you, you'd probably just, shoot me. But this is what the journey is about. It's about growing. It's about learning from every circumstance and then moving on, taking this knowledge that you have acquired from these experiences and going to the next level and meeting somebody there or something there and passing this on. We're connecting little by little to a huge net of people who are like us, and it does serve a purpose. Now, I think I know what the purpose is and what's coming, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but the most important thing is if you experience this number and you experience these changes and you can recognize these courses in life, these levels of life that you seem to go through, go with it, because you can't stop it, and it just makes yourself more miserable when you try.
What strange experiences have you had involving 1111?
Well, I think the whole experience has been strange from a normal person's point of view. I mean, the synchronicity, the magic, the connections, but some of the stranger events that have occurred have been paranormal and supernatural in nature. For instance, on several occasions I've been woken up at 2 or 3 a.m. by my alarm clock going off or by a loud thud. And I open my eyes and see 1111 flashing on my digital clock. And I sit up and think, what the heck? And rub my eyes, and for just that moment, in rubbing my eyes or looking away for just a second, I look back and it's the normal time. Or I hit the alarm and turn the alarm off, and suddenly it's back to the normal time of 3 a.m. or whatever it may be. Now, probably the most supernatural event that ever occurred, and certainly the strangest, was in my previous marriage. There was a lot of strange activity, supernatural activity that went on periodically. We had encountered spirits and other entities off and on through our relationship, and some of them weren't so nice. There was one particular night, I think it was in 94, when we heard all kinds of shuffling coming from the living room kitchen area. It was kind of like banging and furniture being moved around. There was a presence in the whole atmosphere, and I could feel that this thing was outside trying to get in. And my wife and her kids, we were all huddled in the kitchen trying to figure out what this thing was. Underneath the kitchen table, our cat was poised, just terrified, staring at the sliding glass door, and its hair was standing up. And, as we watched, we seen some force press on the glass. And this wasn't the wind. I mean, it literally bowed it in about an inch. And we could feel this thing trying to get in. And I guess I should say first, though, that we had sealed this house with cornmeal and prayer several months before, and had done a ritual on it. And I think that's what prevented this thing from getting in. But on the microwave in the kitchen, her daughter turned around and says, "Look at that." And there on the microwave was 11:11 flashing. And this was about, maybe 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. We all looked at this thing on the clock, and I thought, this thing that's trying to get in isn't a part of our journey. This is a very negative thing. And this time, 11:11 was warning us, and it was just saying to us, stay in the house, stay where you're at, don't open the doors. But interestingly enough, 11:11, the digits were burned into that microwave. Not physically, but every time you turned the microwave on, 11:11 would appear. You could not get any other number. You could set the time. It'd go for 60 seconds, and when it shut off, it wasn't the normal time. It was 11:11, and that lasted for 2 or 3 months, and then all of a sudden it just seemed to fix itself. But that was one of the stranger events that occurred with 11:11. And, of course, there's a lot more that goes on, that went on with that scenario that we can't get into tonight. But, yeah, that's one of the stranger ones. Now, my son has had similar experiences. He's been woken up in the middle of the night with 11:11. He's had 11:11 appear to him under supernatural conditions where it shouldn't be, such as on a clock with the wrong time, that suddenly fades back to the normal time. Now, these moments when this symbol literally woke us up from a dead sleep, I've never figured out what that was about. You would think that there'd be some big impending moment coming, but nothing ever happened. It was just really strange. So these things happened, and it happened with 11:11, but there was no resulting repercussion from it. And it was also at a time that, I really wasn't even thinking about 11:11. It wasn't foremost on my mind. I hadn't seen it for a while. And then suddenly it just bursts onto the scene. But, I can tell you all kinds of stories, but, there's not enough time naturally. And I do touch on them, the more relevant ones, in my book, so that, the stories are there. And people have probably had similar experiences. But again, whether it's leading you to a destination or to a meeting place where you can connect with somebody, or it's protecting you, or you're just experiencing something really bizarre, these are all intimate moments, intimate experiences with 11:11 and whoever it is behind the manifestations of these numbers.
And when we talk about these intimate moments with 11:11 and everything that you have from age 16 till now and shared with your wife, all these, intricate moments, it's amazing what this number stands for. You know what, folks? When we get back from this break, we're going to talk more with Leah and John all about 11:11. We want your perspective on this as well. So, we have a lot of letters coming in from you. I'm sure John and Leah are inundated with them as well. So when we get back from this short commercial break, we'll be talking more about 11:11. Stay tuned. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Underworld Show. And I'm your new host. Well, not new, but I am the host of the Who is the Most. And I have the perfect opportunity to be here this evening with Leah and John of Ghost Radio. Welcome back, guys.
Thanks.
Yes, 11:11, and that's the discussion tonight and what it means. The synchronicities, the intricate moments, the intimacy of this number and what it means to you and to John and to Leah. A lot of people have perspective on this. They have their different ideas and what it means. And tonight we're sharing our view and their view. We're sharing their view. That's what we're doing. And we're giving you the most inside look of Leah and John and 11:11. John, I want to jump right into your journey and take us along. Again, describe what it was in the different moments of intimacy with 11:11. Now, I know you've discussed quite a bit of it, but there had to have been times where it meant something different, and then you grew out of that stage and found yourself going, wow, no, this is what it really means now, and then it changed again on you. So there's got to be a different perspective because it's just not one continual straight line from A to B with 11:11. Am I right?
The 11:11 has never changed. My understanding of it grew, and I realized more and more what it meant. I got to see the bigger picture because the 11:11 to me through my life has always been consistent. It meant here's a change. You're going to go through a period of chaos. This person that you've just met is important. All these things, pay attention to them. You're not going to be the same person after this experience that you were just a week before or moments before or a year before.
And among the many things that the 1111 has taught me, I believe one of the most important is to be aware, to stop and smell the roses, to reside in this constant state of awareness, not to get caught up in the flow of our commercial and material lives, but to always take a breath and look around you and feel around you, because synchronicities and magic are happening at every moment. We create it. If I'm not creating it, you're creating it, or somebody else is creating it, and we're all connected. Again, you might be desiring something that somebody else has an ability to help fulfill through their talents or their abilities, and you can draw them into your life, and vice versa. And when you see 1111, or even some of the other numbers that we see, such as 222 or 333, these are confirmations that there is a synchronistic moment about to happen that pertains to something you want, or something that somebody else needs, or something on the greater plan. We need to pay attention to these things.
But the 1111 first appeared in my life after two very emotional moments. And one was the loss of my grandfather in 1976. Now, up until that point, nobody in my family had ever died. I didn't know what death was. I didn't even think it was possible. We were here forever. It was quite a shock to my system. Afterwards, I found myself and my Irish setter spending a lot of time up in the mountains alone, up fishing, camping, sometimes, a week at a time, questioning life. Now, the other incident that happened at that same time, I think it was just a month before that, was a longtime girlfriend that I'd had since I was, I think, 12 years old, wrote me a Dear John letter and said she was now seeing some other guy. Now, I was living in California at the time I met her at 12, and at age 14, my family moved back to Utah. That was hard enough leaving her. But in my mind and my upbringing, love was forever. It was just, there was just no question. We'd get out of high school and get married and live happily ever after. So that was a major shock to my system. Two major shocks, deeply emotional, that shattered the foundation of a belief system that I had. And it was immediately after these events that 1111 started to appear to me. And it, right from the onset, from when I first seen it, I knew there was something strange about that. And that was the old digital clocks that used to flip, from the 70s. Not the kind we have now, but they had little plates on them that flipped, from one to the other. I started seeing it quite a bit. It guided me. That's what I noticed straight away. If I got a phone call from a friend said, hey, why don't we go out and go do this? We're going to go up to the university and, hang out and play pool, or, go over to the park or over here and there. I, just wouldn't even be looking for it and casually turn around and bang, there's 1111. And I'd think, yeah, okay. Let's do this. Well, I met my first wife under that circumstance because I took the initiative to go do that at that moment. And my life was never the same after that, of course, Then all through that relationship, the symbols were everywhere for a lot of different reasons, including an announcement of the end of that relationship.
Here's a question for you. Sitting there, this is for both of you, actually. I'd like your perspective on this now that we're getting into this. Do you think that the complexities with these numbers and the fact that we lend less credence to ourselves personally, do you think we put too much onus on what this really means? Or are we just not that much aware, again, of the number or ourselves? Now, what I'm trying to say is we put too much into things as a society. We are conditioned by society in many different aspects throughout life as it is. Do we put ourselves out there on that limb and say, well, 1111's this, 444, or whatever number it is, and we're taking away from who we really truly are and our being, rather than put that onus and that self-awareness into us.
Oh, I agree. I mean, you're right. In our culture, we have to belong to one group or another. We just can't be ourselves. And with the 1111, or anything really, whatever belief system we have to jump onto somebody's bandwagon and say, I'm with this party or that party, instead of saying, I just am. I just am. And this is just happening. And that's one of the reasons that I went dark with 1111 for 8 years now. I mean, in 1999, I shut down my website that was quite popular. I mean, it was huge.
It was second only to Solara's website to talk about information on the 1111.
I was getting so many emails and so many people asking me about this and telling me their experiences. I just don't know. I didn't know what to tell them. And what I wanted to tell them, I didn't have the words for because I hadn't finished experiencing yet. I had just moved to Australia, which was a huge moment of understanding. It's taking me 8 years now to figure out another aspect of this, a reversal, a mirror image, where I have turned around and I'm looking back across the water at myself. This is a huge aspect of the 1111 that maybe some people have gotten to, and some people are still heading to their journey. But I shut down the website and stopped answering emails, and I've attempted to put another website back up, but I just haven't had the time. And again, the complexity is just so deep that it just takes forever to try and explain it. But also, I don't want to give anybody answers. I don't want to say it's this or that, because they'll jump on the bandwagon. Pretty soon, everybody's following John Ramses or Lia or Robbie or anybody else because, they need something to believe in other than themselves. And I just don't understand that.
But this is why mainstream churches, religion, TV evangelists, media, corporations, government have such a control on people. Because if they can get out there with their big bullhorns and say, believe in me, believe in this, buy that, don't belong to that group, hate this group, love this group, then they know that the majority of the human population is just going to jump right on the bandwagon. And once somebody has a belief system, it becomes sentimental to them. And when it's sentimental, that is the hardest to break. If you come from a certain background and your parents belong to this background and this belief system and your grandparents, you are very, very hard-pressed to betray that. And that's exactly what it feels, as a betrayal. And if your friends all believe in one political party or another, you feel like you're betraying them. If you go with something else, if you go with your gut feeling, we're all terrified to trust our gut feelings or to stand up for ourselves. Well, I shouldn't say all of us, because, we're here now, you and I and the audience and Ghost Radio, but the majority of the population on the planet is afraid to make a decision. And that's why so many decisions are made for them. They won't trust their instincts, and they won't act upon it. But we've been conditioned also to be terrified of repercussions from these parties that want us to believe in their particular way of thinking.
Well, it goes back to the 1100, year 1100, when everybody thought the world was going to end then. People going cuckoo back then. We see that there's followers. There's too many people out there who are followers. And when I spoke of 1111 being a personal aspect to each and every individual, it means something totally different for each individual, in the respect that we have to love life and live it. Everybody puts the credence to that. I want to take you right to the Mayan calendar. There was a lot of predictions from the Mayans. Some come true, some not. Everybody's putting so much weight on 2012. Nostradamus, sure, he made thousands and thousands of predictions. Hundreds only come true. We have to look at that. Nobody's perfect. Nobody has the resolution or that can give you the reprieve. So when we look at 1111, that is a personal notation for each individual, what it means for them only. So again, I like to reiterate is the fact that 1111 isn't for all of us meaning one thing, it means something different for each and every individual. Correct?
Yes, you're all on your own journey. Let me see if I can take that a bit further. I want to go back to that statement on the 1100s where everybody went crazy. I mean, I think it was the year 1000 into 1100 period where the world was supposed to end. I mean, the world was supposed to end at 100 AD. It was supposed to end at 500 AD, then at 1000, and then at 2000. I mean, every religion has had multiple end-of-the-world scenarios because fear is a huge controlling factor. Most of them never happened. Well, none of them happened because we're all still here. But who went crazy? The whole population. There was only one or two people making statements, but an entire population went nuts. They believed in something that one or two people said instead of saying, I've got an opinion too. I can observe my life. I can observe my surroundings. I can observe the synchronicities and situations. Not all of them could read back then, so they couldn't read, the Bible. It was a great tool of manipulation. But you can look around you.
That's the problem with the world today. That's the whole problem with the world and the premise of life today.
Absolutely.
Everybody's a follower, and yet they don't know how to make a milestone and take a footing.
They don't want to.
And, that's just it. It's the laziness within, and that's just a plain, simple term to use. What you're hitting upon, and all the times that the world was supposed to end, we were conditioned by society throughout history that this was supposed to be the way we're supposed to live. This is what's supposed to happen. Now, the synchronicity between 11/11 and the Mayan calendar, there is a tie there, and people are putting so much weight on this being the time. What can you say or state that can make a difference? I'd like to have both your opinions on this. I'll start with Leah. What can you state to somebody and let them know that 11/11 and tied to the Mayan calendar? What can you say to somebody to give them a little relief? Like I said, 11/11 means to me.
To be quite honest, Robbie, to answer that question honestly, I would refer them straight to John. The amount of research and the amount of effort, time and passion he has put into the 2012 question and the way 11/11 ties into it. I mean, literally he spent nights and nights and nights going over this, so I would just hand them straight over to John, to be quite honest.
Well, there's a conditioned by society answer if I ever heard one.
Oh, yeah, believe what John says. But she's true, I have. I mean, I live it.
It's like if somebody
so much research behind you.
If somebody rang me up and said, I was asking me about what it's like on the other side, I could give them my opinion, but I'd said, if you want to speak to a guy, you really probably need to speak to a guy who speaks to dead people and would then refer them on to Robbie Thomas. Do you know what I mean? I think it's very important to be humble, and it's very important. It's okay to say, I don't know. And it's okay to say, what do you think? And it's okay to say, if it had not been for a person who answered my email and said, I don't get this whole 11/11 thing, but I know this guy who does. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect you with him. And I never saw that person again. I don't even know where she is, but Robbie, her job was done. And it may have been the most important job in her life to have brought John and I together so that we could go on to create Children and Ghost Radio. Her job and her journey in this, our little journey, was as important and instrumental as, somebody like John who's been living with all his life, because she did her job. She looked at my email and she thought, I'm going to pass that along to John because I know he'll know what to tell her. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
No, that's good. And, it's a great debate. It's a great topic of discussion. It's the hot item right now. And again, John, you being the expert and having written, researched, lived it, the validity of you is what I can say I'm not a skeptic of. I enjoy learning, and that's what we're all here for. And going back, we were discussing, 1,000, 1100, when the world was supposed to end and what have you. What's your tie-in of 11/11 in 2012?
Okay, well, that's a really good question because it gets to the core of who we are as these people who see 11/11 and all the other numbers. It gets to the core of all of us who are interested in paranormal, who are spiritual. Now, let me, before we go there, Let me just share something else that ties in with this. Personally, in all of my research through the years and observations, I've come to believe that humanity is classified in three categories. There's us, them, and everyone else. Now, let me explain that. Us, we're the ones who have all this interest, who are trying to keep it alive, who are searching for knowledge. We're the ones who are trying to break through all the lies. We're the ones that have this grain in our DNA that says, nah, there's something bigger. There's something more than what we're being told. And we instinctively know. We know this from birth. It runs in our families. It runs in our bloodlines. Then there's another group out there who wants to shut it down.
They don't want us to remember who we are, and they do everything to keep us too busy or too oppressed to remember. And if we begin to remember, then they start to take measures to crush us down.
And these people have absolutely no compassion, no soul whatsoever. Pure capitalists. They can go out, they can murder people, they can manipulate entire populations, they can crush, countries at will, and get other people to do their dirty work for them. Now, they're a small population too, but they're the ones in power. They've always been in power. Then there's us, again. We're a small minority, and we've always been kept in the shadows. I think it protects us, and we do our work underground. Now, there's everybody else. That's the general population.
Most of the people listening know the story, have heard the story of Enlil and Enki, the two opposing brothers who came down to this planet in order to extract gold from it, to bring back to their planet Nibiru, in order to seed their atmosphere to protect them from the sun's radiation. When they got here, they decided that mining was going to be too difficult. And Enki looked around and seen the primitive ape-like creatures here and said, look, we can create a hybrid. We can create a humanoid-type person to do our work for us. We'll create them to work the mines. We'll create others to work in the gardens. We'll create others for different tasks. And so this was authorized and set into motion. Now, that's kind of in a nutshell. The whole story is quite complex. But Enki was the creator. Enki, and along with his sister Ninarsag, I believe it was, they took the seed of the primitive ape that was already here existing on the planet and inserted it into an egg of Ninarsag. She acted as the first mother. She acted as a surrogate. And in this fashion, they slowly developed humanoids to work at the different tasks that they needed. I think Enki, being a creator, being a lover of his art, wanted to create and did create perfect man, the Adam. Now, Enlil was quite opposed to this. He only wanted these humans to be created for a specific purpose and then, wiped out when they were done. He never wanted to have the ability to procreate. That was a big no-no. But Enki gave them the ability to procreate, and he gave them something else. He gave them a seed of knowledge, the seed of wisdom, the seed of intellect, of the soul. He gave them a portion of their DNA that would allow us not to worship these gods, but to remember where we come from, and in doing so, remember who we were. Now, he gave us the ability to procreate because it was just too difficult to keep cloning in test tubes, and frankly, in Narsag, I think it pretty much burned out on the whole surrogate thing. But at any rate, there was different races and different types of humans created for different purposes. Enki created perfect man, absolute perfect in his image, in what he had wanted to create. It had consciousness, it had intelligence, it had great appearance, it had compassion, it had genetic knowledge planted there in the DNA by Enki. But Enlil did not like that at all, and he wanted them all wiped out. And Enlil was furious about it. The fact that they could procreate and now breed like rabbits, and have intelligence and be like the gods and think like the gods and feel like them, it just infuriated him to no end. And so on one of the passings of Nibiru, it was apparent that the Earth was going to tip, the ice caps were going to be knocked off of their base and slip into the ocean. There was going to be huge cataclysm. Most of humanity and most of the life on the planet was going to be wiped out. And it was decided by Enlil and the council on his home planet to allow this to happen. But Enki didn't want to see his creations terminated. I mean, he loved us. He created us. And in defiance of the council's orders, he snuck down to Earth and saved, who we know now as Noah, by instructing him on how to build an ark or a vessel of some type to escape the coming catastrophe. Well, we know from biblical history and legends of the Maya and Egyptians and basically every country and every culture in the world, that there was a great flood and that one bloodline was saved. And this was the pure bloodline that hadn't interbred with the Nephilim. This was a pure bloodline that goes directly back to what Enki had originally created, back to the Adam. And once this was discovered that humans had been saved, it was agreed by the council to allow them to remain, to live, and to grow. They were given education, they were taught civilization, they were taught, we were taught basically everything. Now, Enlil still could not stand us. He absolutely detests the human race. He thinks we're nothing but scourge of the earth. And of course, he's very jealous of his brother for reasons that you'll have to read for yourself. We can't get into tonight. But the idea of preserving mankind was to give them intelligence, to give them civilization, to give them all the good qualities that were possible. It was Enlil's desire that they all be corrupted. Because if we can prove corruption to the council on the next passing of Nibiru or the next destruction of the earth, then he can let them all be wiped out. You say, look, human race is just horribly corrupted. It's greedy. It's destructive. They murder each other. They don't care about each other. The element of compassion is gone. There's no reason to let them survive. And no doubt they'll rule in his favor if it can be shown that the majority of us are, the majority of humanity is a failed experiment. Now, what I believe is that after the flood, civilizations were reinstated. And these civilizations were reinstated for the benefit of man. Kingships and hierarchies were established, universities of education. But I believe also that the genetic manipulation of the human species continued, as well as it did with animals too. This still continued. It still went on. Now, what I believe is that there was other races, other types of humans created for different purposes. And I do believe that there was a specific race created by Enlil who was empty and void of anything but allegiance to Enlil and his cause. They were his soldiers. And it was their main purpose to conquer and corrupt humanity, because Enlil couldn't do it himself. But if he had an army of these who could, then he could go to the council and say, look, these guys are corrupt. Let's just let them get wiped out. I think this bloodline is still here. I think we who see the 1111, we who see ghosts, we who see UFOs, we who interact with them, we who experience these, we who seek this knowledge instinctively are of that bloodline. It goes back through the Essene line, the compassion, the intellect. They were the healers. It goes back on through, Solomon possibly, but the line is straight back. Not everybody has the element of compassion. Not everybody has the element of reason. We have all of these, and that's why we're feared. We're feared by this other bloodline, who I call the Darkborn. It's commonly referred to us, our type, as the star-seeded, the Starborn. And I might add that the term Starborn was first used and first coined by Brad Steiger back in the 1970s. It's been used by everybody. But I believe that there is a Darkborn bloodline specifically hell-bent on controlling and manipulating the Starborn and most of humanity. And right now, they're in control of most of humanity. They do it through the media. They do it through fear. They do it through threats and wars. They do it through taking all of your rights away. And now I believe that all of this is coming to a head, and it could very well be the 2012 scenario. But I believe we have always been in a constant battle with these Darkborn for the sake of humanity. And you can see the stories going back to Enlil and Enki, the opposing brothers who hated each other. One spiritual, one the creator, the artist, one materialistic. One was the soldier, the military might. One was the science officer. You see it in the Osiris and Set legends of Jesus and Lucifer. And I believe there's a period in history coming very shortly when this is all going to come to a head, that we have been in a constant battle with this opposing force, these Darkborn, for the sake of humanity, in order to save humanity. I believe that we, all of our kind, we the spiritual ones, are the chosen ones. Not just us who see 11:11, not just those who see UFOs, not just those who go to church, but those who have this element. And I hate to say it, but I believe very, very strongly that there is a coming battle between us and them, again, for the sake of everybody else. And only then can we make this planet a better place. If they can be neutralized, then we can make this planet a better place, more productive, more spiritual. But now there's something else that's very unique about us. Not only do we have common traits, we're seekers of knowledge, we're spiritual, we have the element of compassion, but our life paths seem to be the same. We seem to be led on the same path. Many of us, for some reason that I haven't figured out yet, we seem to lose our father figure around the age of 5 or 6, 4, 5, or 6. There's a divorce. It's not usually through death. Sometimes it's the mother figure who leaves. I found that in 2 cases, but mostly around that age, it's the father figure. Why? I think it's because the star child needs to have, for a certain period of time, a direct influence by the female entity, the female human, that female energy, that female spirituality. Myself, when my parents broke up when I was 5 years old, 5.5, I was smothered in love, but the women ruled our family. I come from a Greek background, and I understand that female element. But so many people have had these same experiences. And these are among the people who see different numbers, who are being guided. Another trait that we seem to share, and one that's sometimes unfortunate unless you can be totally spiritual about it, is we often seem to find ourselves in lower income or struggling situations. And I think the reason is that to a degree we're hidden among the common. Money shouldn't mean everything to us, but of course it does. We've got to eat, we've got to feed our families, we want to buy them nice things too. We're suckers for advertisement, just like everybody else. The pressure's there. It's a test. It's one that I've failed miserably. But now that I've described a little bit about the Starborn, of who I believe we are, and about the Darkborn, who we're up against, now I think we can talk about the Mayan calendar. Now, in all my years of researching and contemplating many different areas of symbology and the calendar, I've come to the conclusion that the date of 2012 is off by 2 years. It's wrong. Now, there are 3 circumstantial clues that lend credence to this theory that I have. One is the most obvious, the Julian calendar that we use today. That was started in the year 1 AD. There was never a 0 year. That renders the year 1000 and the year 2000 non-existent. They don't exist. They're phantom years. Even the official beginning of the millennium was in 2001, not 2000. So if we eliminate those 2 years, 1000 and 2000 AD, from the equation, then we come up with 2010. Well, that's just right around the corner. Now, interestingly enough, I think other people know this. I think a lot of other people knew this, and they've kept it secret. It's been encoded for all of us. It's been encoded so that we can see it. And where it has been encoded most prominently is on the seal, the Great Seal of the United States. And where the message has been hidden is on the $1 bill. Let's get into the Great Seal first. There's a lot of elements of this Great Seal that match the Mayan calendar and the Mayan long count system. The number 13 is incorporated throughout the design. 13 this, 13 that. We have 13 arrows, 13 leaves, 13 feathers, I think, on the tail of the eagle. We have peace and war, the arrows and the olive leaves, the two opposing forces that'll ultimately come together. The eagle is looking on the $1 bill to the center of the $1 bill. What is it? 1. It says 1 in the dead center. Now, the eagle was originally and always intended to be a phoenix. That means that there's going to be an ending and a rebirth, and something to do with 13. Well, I believe it has everything to do with announcing the 13th Baktun, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, of the Mayan long count era, the 144,000 days. I think they're announcing that here is where we are heading, that in the year 2010, the United States will end officially, maybe not be destroyed, but we can already see signs of it turning into something else with the current administration we have. It's not the United States that I grew up loving and knowing. But let's go to the other side, to the unfinished pyramid for a moment. This is very interesting. I look at the stonework as eras in the history of the United States. I look at them as eras of 13 years each. Now, if you count those from the date at the bottom of 1776, count 13 years up, you come up with 1945. That's where the stonework ends, is in 1945. Well, that's where the World War II ended. That's where Roosevelt ended. President Roosevelt was considered the last of the Founding Fathers, and he was a Mason. It was he who decided to dust off the Great Seal of the United States, which had been long since forgotten, and place it where everyone in the world could see it, on the $1 bill. And I think this is one of the reasons why the $1 bill has been so hard-pressed to be replaced by anything else. They've tried a few times, but that $1 bill is very, very special. On the back, if you take a $1 bill out and look at it, at least the earlier ones, up until the year 2000, what you see is a 1 in each corner, followed by a big round dot on either side. Put those together and you've got 1111. Right in the dead center, you've got a large word that says 1. This 1111 is very special, and it does reflect Mayanism, because the number in Mayan for 11 was 2 bars with a dot. Now, if you take 2 bars with a dot and make 2 bars with a dot again, you've got the elements of 1111. Turn them on their side so they face each other. You've got 11 ... 11. They incorporated that into the $1 bill. Now let's go back to the pyramid for just a moment, because this is very important. The stonework ends in 1945. Now, if we draw an imaginary line to the apex above the all-seeing eye, the eye of Horus, whatever it might be, if you draw this line up and then, keeping the same distance in spacing, you continue the layers up to the top of the apex, what you find is 18 eras of 13 years each, and the entire pyramid beginning in 1776 ends in the year 2010. That's 18 eras of 13 years each. It doesn't go beyond that. I don't think it was intended to. I think they knew that there was an end time coming. And if you're in the U.S. and you've got a $1 bill, take it out. Take a good look at it. That message was put there for a reason. But it was only visible to those of us who see 1111. It is so important. But why are we picking up mentally on a symbol that was used for Mayan counting? Well, maybe they got it from somewhere. Whoever or whatever is out there that can instantly manifest these synchronicities in our life may have had something to do with the symbol of that, with Mayan symbology. It may have something to do with what's manifesting the same digits that we see on clocks. Maybe it's the circle makers, crop circles. It has been scientifically stated peer-reviewed and scientifically stated that crop circles are made by anomalous balls of light that seemingly have intelligence. Wow. That is a scientific community saying that. That means that there is something else out there making these things geometric forms, interacting with us, giving us messages constantly, and they're not human. I don't know who they are. I'm sure there's a lot of theories out there. Light beings, silicon beings, aliens. I don't know, but I think that they are possibly, in part, responsible for guiding us, this same group, because we're getting a lot of the same messages in the crop circles. But I don't think that year 2012 is accurate. I think it's 2010. I think it's still December 24th. I don't have any reason to denounce that date. But I think that it was 2010. I think there are people on this planet who know the date is 2010, not 2012. And I think that the new era is the 13th Bakatun. And I think it is all over the $1 bill, all over the Great Seal. And man, I can sure see things escalating out there right now. It's us against them, quite frankly. It's the Starborn against the Darkborn. And I know everybody in the ufology department, everybody in the fields of ufology, crop circles, ghost hunting, the magazines that lend to this, the radio stations, we're all the same. I really don't know why a lot of you guys are fighting and bickering, because we're all on the same journey. We're one force. They're your enemies, the enemies of humanity, the enemies of the earth. They're the ones raping the earth for minerals to make themselves rich, enslaving us so that we don't have time to even think or wonder. But if you have an interest in this stuff, if you have psychic, if you have an interest in UFOs, Sasquatch, if you have an interest in knowing who you come from, where you come from, well, you're one of us. You're the Starborn. Because that interest is genetically created. And there is an event coming. I don't know what's going to happen then, but I will tell you this. I think that the year 2012 is being hyped up, and these Darkborn, these corporations, these elite families that are now in control are going to manufacture something. And you know what? We'll go through the rest of history thinking that it was just supposed to happen. That, gee, it was 2012. It was the end of the world. It was wars. It was famine. It was disease. It was pandemics. No, I think they're all manufactured. And I think they're gearing us up for our own extinction. I mean, right now they blame global warming and every other possible catastrophe on populations. They've been blaming us for a long time. Well, they don't give us any options to work with. They keep telling us it's our fault, that we're consuming too much, but it's them who are raping the jungles and the forests, raping the land for minerals, harvesting it, packaging it, and selling it to us. They don't give us any options. We know there's free energy. We know there's options. People have developed them. They disappear in a hurry. But I think we're wisening up now, and I think the Internet has had a huge role in that. This Internet, even though it was created for military purposes, has become their biggest monster. It is a major thorn in their side. But anyway, that's all I have time to get into tonight about the Mayan calendar and the Great Seal. But, research this. It's there.
Let's go back 30 years, 40 years, and look at the people there who were so-called in-the-closet psychics, well, not psychics, in-the-closet spiritual people. Not coming out in full numbers. But then here we are 40 years forward in what's going on in this world, and everybody's reaching for spiritualism. So now that it's coming full circle, 100-fold, and our children, as you state, are going to just be at the helm of everything, which they are. They're fast learners. They're sponges. We are giving them this opportunity and all this education of what is to come. It's been instilled within us for forever and a day. It's just the fact that people haven't brought that acceptance out. So now that everybody's coming out of the closet and everybody wants to reach for the spirit side of things, do you feel that if we would have done that 30, 40 years ago, people would be talking about this stuff then much more than they are now?
Oh, absolutely. I think it really began about 40, 50 years ago. I think this DNA started to combine and form as it is today with this consciousness, around the mid-1940s. I don't know why I feel that. I don't have any evidence. It's just something that I've managed to trace back as far as people that I've talked to and where this consciousness began, somewhere back there. But that's not saying that this bloodline, this consciousness, this compassion, this intelligence and spirituality has not always been here. It has. It goes straight on back through the Essene line, back on through all the way back to perhaps Enki. You can see this type of bloodline in the Essenes, in other groups, throughout the world too. It was preserved. But the 1960s, wow, what a time. The dawning of the age of Aquarius.
Yeah.
Free love, spirituality, peace. And, we've come right back to that again. Here we've got our own little Vietnam going on over in, Iraq and Iran. Well, soon to be Iran. I'll tell you what, they're not going to let that go. Afghanistan. Nope. You have a lot of the shows of the same type of music coming out that was back in the 70s. But see, they've put a crackdown on it. There would never, ever be another time in history like the free love, free thought days of the 1960s. They've made sure of that. But that's when it began. That planted the seeds of consciousness. The hippies have now grown up to run companies to give birth to children who have now given birth to children. They've got grandchildren. That consciousness is there. And all of their experiences are combined into instinct. Everything that they despised, that their parents despised about greed and about corruption and capitalism and struggling and everything has been incorporated into their DNA. They instinctively despise this. They instinctively reach for that spiritual side. There's got to be something better. There is something better. And that's where we're heading. Now,
here's something I want to talk to you about.
Yeah.
You had a series of dreams back in 1988.
Yeah.
And these dreams included, a calendar. And we'll call it the Stargate. Give us a little bit of what it felt like, where we're going, and your perspective on this.
Okay, that's interesting. The Stargate, I've been trying to teach that for, almost 20 years now, but I can't. It's something that I've had to live to understand. Back in 1988, I was just recently married, and we had just recently moved to Arizona, to Phoenix. Now, that was a time that I had also discovered the Lost Dutchman mine, which I had written a book about, Quest for Peralta Gold. Everything's there, the mines, the gold, hell, it's all there. It's all in my book, too. I don't try to hide anything. But something to do with that mountain triggered it. I had a dream about that mountain, Red Mountain, where a huge firebird just exploded into life onto that mountain. And I've still got a story here that in one of my boxes that I had written about that. But anyway, after that dream, for the next couple of years, I started having almost waking dreams where geometrical images would just appear into my mind, just into my sleep, and it would seem to burn right into my memory. First, it started out as a triangle, and then there were lines here and lines there. What I come up with, but incidentally, I've put a copy of it up on the internet. What I come up with ultimately was a very complex diagram that I believe, it's multifold. I don't even know how to describe it, and I only know about 3/4 of its function. Part of it is a calendar. The calendar runs from 1990 to 2010. It ends in 2010. Now, up and down the sides of this pyramid, on the outside are octaves of 11, frequencies of 11. On the insides are frequencies of 9. What you have is spiritual and materialism. It gets to the year 2000 at the apex, and then the numbers switch. They reverse themselves while still maintaining octaves. In other words, 56 becomes 65, and 45 becomes 54. They're still octaves of 11 and 9, but it clearly depicts a reversal, and it goes all the way down until it ends at 2010. Now, what this was telling me was that you have this amount of time to begin switching from materialistic to spiritual. Put spiritual first, or you're going to burn out. You're not going to make it. You're going to be crushed right out of existence. And that'll be done through stress, through heart attacks, through physical means. And along the bottom is the calendar. Now, in the center are 4 lines. Looks very much like a step pyramid. Now, excuse me, each one of these, the very last dream that I had, was this Stargate complete. Now, I call it a Stargate because, well, that's basically what I was told in the dream at the last moment, during the last dream that I'd had. Just, here it is, Stargate. In the center are 4 lines that makes it look very much like a step pyramid. You've got, starting at the bottom, 11, and then 22, 33, 44, and 55 on up. Now, it is based on Pythagorean musical scales, and I haven't quite figured it out yet. But this is an acoustic generator, and I know that for a fact. I just don't know how to activate it. It's a blueprint or a schematic for creating an acoustic generator that can open a portal. And this is all based on sound, just pure sound. You have various frequencies and modulation. But the point that I wanted to get to is this Stargate, the last dream that I had, showed it to me, and then I was swept into each one of these levels, one by one. The first level, the very first world, back in wherever it began, which was octave 11. This was a vibration. Now, what I come to understand was, let's say that there's 26,000 years to each world. The vibration of the first world was 11. But the vibration of the next world, the second world, was 22. It was double the vibration, but the same 26-year span. Well, now we're in 44, and we keep increasing. Time isn't so much being sped up as it is being compressed. We're all being compressed. Everything is being compressed as we head towards this hourglass moment. Something's got to give. And we can feel that in almost everything that we do. Not just world events, but in everyday life. There just doesn't seem to be enough time. And everything that we do seems to be a struggle. That's because these things are compressed. All of our time is compressed.
Do you think there's going to be an implosion?
I think it's going to go through like an hourglass. There's going to be this reversal. We're going to shoot into the 6th world, or as the Mayans would say, or the 5th world, as the Hopi would say. Not everybody's going to make it through because, again, this is pure consciousness. Now, let me make a point here with the Hopi legends. At the end of the 4th world, there was a lot of people that didn't believe those who were saying they could see signs in the sky. Most of the population didn't believe them. There was a few of them, a few groups that says, look, there's a ship right there. There are signs. There's our God. We have to follow it. Nobody could see it. Well, they followed it, and they were saved. They were taken underground, and they were kept by the ant people. Now, there were a few who couldn't see it, but they believed in the people who could, and they were saved. At the end, there were those people who could see something. They were spiritually attuned. There was only a small percentage who were. There was even smaller percentage of the commoners, the average people, who believed in what the other people could see and went along with them. The rest of the people wiped out. It's within every culture that something major happened. And I believe that's going to happen again, but I don't believe we're going to be wiped out from a major earth catastrophe. I think that it's just going to compress to the point that our civilizations don't exist. They're destroyed internally. Economic systems collapse. Food collapses. Everything collapses. just under the pure weight. I mean, all civilizations crumble under the weight of their own ambitions, and that's where we're at now. We've reached the peak of our ambition. We can't go any higher. You know, we're at the apex. It's got to collapse. Couple that with all of the pressure of time being compressed, of heading towards this last moment, of this intense conflict between those of us who are very spiritual and searching and those who just don't want anybody to know anything. They just want to shut us down and tell us to do what we're told. All of these things combined is what I believe will be the apex of 2010, 2012, whichever year it may be. And something's going to happen. I just don't know what. But, you know, it all looks like it's all heading there. And I hope that most of us survive. You know, not the assholes out there who've caused all the trouble. But, you know, all the good people, I hope they survive. But, God, who knows? But the thing is, if we keep following our instinct, if we keep trusting our instinct and listening to that little voice, listening to the vibrations of the earth and attuning to it, and listening to one another instead of fighting with each other and bickering about who owns this cemetery or who saw that UFO or whatever, become one. Then only as one unit, just like it says on the $1 bill in between the 1111 symbol, one, we can survive it. The message has been encoded. It's been there for all of us. Only a very small group of people know it. And I think Lyndon B. Johnson was one of them.
Yes, indeed. The ones who open their eyes and have the acceptance and the knowledge know. Well, John, thank you so much.
Well, Rob, we could have gone on for hours and hours because there's so much to cover.
Yes, we could. This was just, you know, it's a topic that can go on for hours and hours. And, you know, only so much time in a show and a program, and right now my clock shows 11:00. Isn't that funny?
Good for you, mate.
You know, that's a synchronicity in itself. It's telling me it's time to go, and I want to give Leah the last word on her show about 11:11. Leah, go ahead.
I would just invite everybody who does see 11:11 to write to us or to write to Robbie, and you know, just trust your own instincts. And I guess the thing I want to confirm is, yes, it is talking to you. Yes, it is trying to deliver a very important message. What that message is, you really need to figure out for yourself. But connecting with other 1111 people and passing on your information and receiving information from others is also equally important. Trust your instincts, guys. That's what it's all about.
It really is that, and connecting.
Connect, you know? Connect. Write to us, and you know, I mean, the people who see 1111 are listening to this right now instead of watching some reality TV program on the TV. You know, and they've known it all their life, and they're searching for whatever they think their calling is within them, and 1111 may be guiding them to that. It really might be. I want to thank Robbie for stepping into the big chair tonight and
absolutely, it's been
hosting
a
Underworld.
Huge honor. I'm glad to have you on board tonight for this.
We love this guy. He's a very, very special friend. We've got no qualms about saying that. We absolutely love Robbie Thomas. You can hear his radio program, A Link to Heaven, through Ghost Radio, or head on over to Robbie's site, robbiethomas.net. And you can click on to his webpage and sort out all his stuff and buy his books and get a reading and just, you know, it's a really cool webpage, so get over there. But thank you, Robbie. We love you.
Thank you very much. And you guys are the bomb. I love you, Leah. I love you, John. You guys are great. And remember, folks, what you do today reflects what you have tomorrow. Your perspective, the numbers, especially 1111, is a personal attribute. So 1111, the mystique, the phenomena, got it right here on Ghost Radio Australia. I'm Robbie Thomas for the Underworld Show. Leah and John, thank you so much. Ghost Radio rocks. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Robbie.
You've been listening to Australia's own Underworld Show with host Lia Ramses.
The Underworld Show is produced in Perth, Western Australia by iProdigy Communications exclusively for Ghost Radio Australia and the Ghost Radio Network. Tune in every Sunday at 8 p.m. Perth time to hear fascinating guests and topics such as the one you just listened to. For more information on upcoming guests, events, and breaking news, visit www.underworldshow.com or www.ghostradio.com.au.
Thanks for listening, everybody. And on a final note, I just want to say happy anniversary, honey.
And happy anniversary to you, too.
Thanks for listening to Ghost Radio.